So let's talk about this new trend of multi-generational living, shall we? And let's talk about what that looks like if you have a narcissistic family. There are more and more articles and videos I'm seeing about multi-generational living every day now. It makes sense in the midst of a real estate crisis, right? But people transforming garages into apartments or buying homes that can be repurposed to hold multiple generations, and happy stories about how everyone meets up for dinner in the Central Courtyard and helps each other out. Nice work if you can get it. But when people come from narcissistic family systems, multi-generational living is not only not likely to be a viable option in any way, you might actually need to put padded walls around that courtyard because someone's going to get hurt. So I was sitting with a group of friends recently. It's what led me to do this video. And one of them was wanting to share an actual video she'd watched about something else, about a family that had made this rather cool multi-generational residence with these movable staircases that could shift, and the whole place could shift as their kids get older, that had space for their older parents and a garden, and everyone had lots of leisure time, and everyone got along, and they ate the fresh vegetables they were growing in the garden, and lots of helping each other, and everyone in the group in my house was watching this video and swooning, and one person in the group was sort of yammering on about the superiority of the culture where this multi-generational home was. The video was not shot in the United States. And see how those people in that country can make those things work and how Americans are selfish. I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, slow down, cowboy. So then the folks who were oohing and eyeing about the Central Courtyards and the communal vegetable gardens, I said, y'all didn't stop to think that it is simply not an option for people who have toxic families of origin or who have antagonistic or toxic in-laws. Listen, if I had only one wish as a shrink, it's that I wish everyone had that, a healthy enough family that something like that could be figured out. Heaven knows everyone needs help throughout all phases of their life. And if everyone had that healthy family, I'd be out of a job, probably eating out of my vegetable garden. But as I listened to that video, I couldn't even bear to watch it. I felt it in my body. My heart felt heavy for all the people who couldn't make this happen in their lives and the assumptions we make about the people who can't or don't make something like this happen in their lives. Ironically, right after that experience of that whole video thing, I was reading what some therapists wrote about familial estrangement, of not being in contact with your family, with one of them saying it's lazy to be estranged from your family and that people need to learn that families aren't perfect and making compromises for different kinds of people was a part of good mental health. And oh, I loved this part, that the responsibility is on the adult child to understand what it was about their own parent that caused their parent to cause such pain for them. You gotta love that, right? After a childhood spent blaming yourself for your parents' abusive behavior, a shrink is now telling you to spend your adulthood taking your time focusing on why your own parent was so cruel to you. Nice, right? And that to be healthy and mature, you have to learn to manage complicated relationships. Yup, here's a way to manage them, folks. Disengage and stop making excuses for another person's toxic behavior. The other shrink who was writing about this said that people wanting to distance from their own family systems or disengage from them or even go no contact are merely very individualistic, and they just view their families or traumatizing families as disposable. And my favorite was that the therapists want clients to go no contact, so the therapist becomes the patient's new family and keeps taking the patient's money. It's so awful. I love it when a patient finally says to me, I'm good. Actually, doc, you know what? I think we're good. Like, I'm feeling a lot stronger. Or I could take a break now. I mean, yeah, sure, there'd be some unethical therapists who keep clients on the chain. But to assume that therapists would support a client going no contact to get more money is absurd. We want them to get better. And no thanks. I don't need the patient to think I'm their family. I've got one. Thanks. Set. And actually, the shrink that made that comment is really off base. Because if a person followed his guidance to try to make it work with a harmful family system, To be honest with you, it's those patients that are more likely to become even more reliant on a therapist to stay sane in the middle of all this toxicity. Frankly, when folks go no contact, that's oftentimes when they stop needing me. But this is what we see when there are some therapists who do shame and blame people, and blaming the person who sees that maybe no contact or less contact is a path forward. But I've gone too far off track. Let's go back to the multi-generational living. Because this whole multi-generational thing almost romanticizes all of this. And listen, under the right circumstances, this multi-generational thing sounds great, right? Being with grandparents, sharing duties, having childcare, having elder care. It sounds magnificent under the right circumstances. And forget the shaming therapists out there. This kind of stuff about these multi-generational homes can bring up grief and even confusion for people who are embedded in or from narcissistic family systems where this is simply not possible. Now, some of you may be stuck in multi-generational living situations with narcissistic family systems. Maybe you don't all live in the same house, but perhaps you live next door or nearby. Perhaps it's culturally mandated that you must live near family members or live with them. And you may be wondering why this feels worse. And that the fantasy is that, can you imagine, like, what if I could move away from all this? I think I might feel better. Listen, you may also be in that purgatory between the trauma bond and the sense of wanting to do the right thing and guilt and duty, and have attempted to create a multi-generational living situation, which is absolutely dreadful. So you have narcissistic family members close, and maybe you're going through the motions of perhaps, I don't know, caring for an older parent or an older in-law, but still having to endure their manipulations, their hostility, their digs, their barbs, their passive-aggressive stuff, the usual drill. So you may very well be participating in this whole happy world of multi-generational living, and finding that it's actually taking years off of your life while it is keeping the narcissistic person in your life very well cared for. And you might sometimes wonder, are they going to outlive me? Society often wants there to be one quick, lovey fix for everyone. But over and over again, our recommendations almost never account for families that could be potentially harmful spaces. Obviously, as a therapist who does what I do, my view is a little distorted because I'm going to hear more stories about people with difficult families. But the fact is, in our Instagram-soaked pseudo-reality, look how perfect our lives are world that we are in, heaven knows that there are so many people who are struggling with these stories. If you are from a narcissistic family system and continuing have to live near them or care for them in later life, and it's your responsibility, there's not much you could do about it, it becomes crucial that you do have some supports outside of that family system. People you can turn to and talk with and be your authentic self with and maintain reciprocal relationships with, and not feel as though you have to do things to earn their love. And maybe multi-generational living could work for everyone if either you could build in a little extra room for the therapist to move into, or you could build an extra floor on your house for your sane friends and supports to live in as well. But ultimately, there are many folks out there who are facing the rather terrible peril of what to do with a variety of unhealthy family members that they may feel some responsibility for or don't want to feel responsibility for or still dealing with the guilt of. And there ain't no garden on a rooftop or central courtyard where everyone's getting along. Like I said, those of you who've got this figured out, you aren't watching this video. But for the rest of us, we know that this journey tends to have lots of turns in the road, and each one gets deeper and more difficult with each passing year in most of these families. Thanks again.